Hello everyone, and welcome to my review of Shumatsu no Valkyrie Chapter 35. As I mentioned in the last review, this was a double month, and it took a little longer to get this chapter translated, but it's finally here, and this one is showing more of the actual fight. The last chapter was more tying up the stuff happening with Loki and Buddha on the sidelines. Before we get into the chapter itself, I recently opened up a Discord server. You can go on there to discuss Record of Ragnarok as well as the other series that I do on this channel. So if you're interested, check out my Discord server. I'll have a link in the description below. So getting right into the chapter, we start off basically where last chapter ended, with Shiva having one of his arms crushed and Zeus coming back to seeing this whole mess that just happened. And he asked Hermes what happened, and Hermes just like, oh, he just grabbed Shiva's arm and crushed it. And Zeus seems horrified by this concept. And then we flash back to a couple minutes ago to show what happened. So I said at the end of my last chapter review that I wasn't sure how I felt about them basically showing the end result of chapter 35 at the end of 34. Because it sort of takes the tension out of what's going to happen in chapter 35. But upon reading through it again, I think the stuff that happens in this chapter makes that sort of not an issue, because you're still excited to see what stuff Raiden and Shiva are going to do leading up to that moment. So, right after Raiden's transformation, he tells Shiva not to give out on him, and Shiva basically says, don't give me that crap. So then, Raiden flash steps over to him, basically, which shocks Shiva, and Raiden gets ready to do a big punch. His fist is glowing, and we see, like, all of his muscles. They've done this a few times with Raiden, because that's, like, his whole thing. It's weird. Wouldn't Lubu have the strongest muscles if he was the strongest man, or does he just have inhuman strength not related to his muscles? I mean, like, it seemed Lubu didn't have the whole perpetual muscle growth thing, so I guess that's how it's different. But Raiden says that he doesn't even know what'll happen if he hits Shiva at full power. So Shiva tries to block it, and he's surprised. You can see the punch, like, denting into his arm, and he blows him back. And then he starts to do an attack rush, which gets Shiva on the jaw, and he gets pissed off, and then is surprised when Raiden does a fucking clothesline called Kiku Ichimonji, and he sends Shiva spinning in the air. It's tremendous. I still think it's very funny how this is the first round where the god is actually shorter than the human, because as we've seen with a lot of these fights, or as we know, the gods are like these inhuman higher plane beings, so obviously they're going to be like monstrous and much bigger than people are most of the time. And we've seen that with quite a few of the fights. Mostly Adam versus Zeus and Jack versus Heracles. But with this fight, Raiden is just such a massive lad that he just towers over the manlet Shiva. Which I think is funny, just considering how much Shiva seems to think that he's hot shit, that the guy he fights is taller than him. But Heimdall is talking about how it's not even close, and how Raiden is completely overpowering Shiva, and the gods are freaked out by this, and all the humans are cheering him on. And then we go to see one of the Yokozuna, Tanakaze Kajinosuke, and he's so moved by seeing how awesome Raiden is. He's crying. He looks like a fish. It's good to see that we've got back to the really weird reaction faces. I don't think we've gotten these in a while. And he's very proud to see that Raiden is freed from his restraints. And then the other Yokozuna, Onogawa Kisaburo, agrees and says that Raiden's strength lies in its formlessness, and that the ring was just too cramped for him. And we get like a little flashback of Raiden in the sumo ring. So then they go back to cheering him on. We go to Brunhild and Gaul is talking about how awesome it was, and that Raiden wasn't just this gluttonous coomer that she thought he was. And she seems very excited and happy, and thinks that they can finally give humanity the lead. which, let's hope she didn't jink it, or actually, I kind of hope she does, because I'm still rooting for Shiva. So Shiva's coughing up blood, and is trying to, like, shake himself back awake, because that clothesline was a monster. That took the air out of him. It knocked him off his feet. So Raiden grabs Shiva by the side of the head, and he rears back and says, let's get this over with already. And he goes in for this terrifying headbutt. If you've ever seen someone do a headbutt in a real fight, that's some scary shit. So seeing Raiden do it with, like, these glowing eyes and stuff is pretty nuts. And it's called Daki Jizo. Daki Jizo. And everyone's shocked, and we see some blood dripping down at the end of the page. Then we see that Shiva had headbutted Raiden before Raiden could headbutt him. And he's like, hey, I guess that works. And Gare is, of course, freaked out by this, because it seemed like Raiden was, he had it in the bag. Which, of course, he didn't. It's way too early for Raiden to have it in the bag. So Shiva does a double palm strike that seems to knock the air out of Raiden, and then he follows it up immediately with this double uppercut, which sends Raiden reeling back. So, Shiva taps on his head, and he says, when it comes to being headstrong, I can't be beat. Which is, I think is Shiva the first person to do puns? If so, that's really funny. So he says, I guess the ball's in my court now, and starts doing an attack rush like Raiden was doing with one hand, but now he's doing it with all four arms, and he keeps egging him on. He says, come on. It's pretty great stuff. Now, most of the humans are calling them, like, rapid-fire pea shooters, and that they won't do anything to Raiden. But the Yokozuna are like, do those look like pea shooters to you? And the fifth Yokozuna says, no, that's like taking a cannon shot, rapid fire. We see Raiden's getting pushed back, his feet are dragging in the dirt, and he tries to punch Shiva, and he lands a hit on, like, his jaw, but it doesn't do anything to Shiva. He's, like, grinning like a maniac. And he keeps doing the attack rush. And he hits Raiden's guard with two of his arms on the right side, but then follows up with a shot to the side with his left arms. I think that might have been like a liver shot or something. But as Raiden falls to the ground, Shiva's lower left arm, like, locks up. And we see that Raiden has grabbed his forearm. And Raiden's like, oh man, you're really pissing me off. And we see the pressure building up around Shiva's forearm. And Shiva gets freaked out. He realizes what's happening. He tells him to get off of him. And Raiden, like, the front of his body's all shadowed out and his eyes are whited out, and he says that's not going to happen. And his arms get massive. They bulge up again. And he does a move called Midare Botan. And then there's this splurch noise, and we see, like, half of the audience just in shock, which was a really good panel. I think this was actually, like, probably... I just really like stuff like this, where you don't have to show what happened, you just show, like, the stunned silence of the audience, and this, like, bone-crushing noise happening in front of them. So, Shiva screams and kicks Raiden off of him, and we see that his arm's all fucked up now. And Raiden tells him that was really rash of Shiva to do, and that basically if Raiden hadn't let go, he could have torn his arm off. And this is where we get back to the very start of the chapter. Now we go to Gaul, who's just remarking on how strong Raiden's muscles are. And Brunhild explains that his muscles alone wouldn't be capable of doing that, but with the power of his Voland, he now has complete control and command over his muscles. Which basically is what allows him to bulk up like that. He's basically the human version of Zeus, with Zeus's whole transformation ability. And Raiden just says that's pretty neat. I just think the way he addressed that was kind of funny. So Brunhild then continues and says that from here onward, nobody, not even Raiden himself, has seen anything like this. He's going to learn his true strength in this battle. And then they have the explanation for Thread's name, which is the Strong One. So I guess he may also be getting a strength boost, or maybe essentially she's giving Raiden the strength to control his own muscles. But the humans are celebrating Raiden and cheering him on, and the gods are getting freaked out, and they're starting to worry about the concept of losing 3 in a row. And we see the gods actually start like praying to Shiva to pull through on it. And the narrator says that while most of the gods were trembling in fear with a premonition they had never dared to show before, the Hindu gods who knew Shiva had a different reaction entirely. And we see this three-faced guy saying that Shiva would never lose to that kid. And then we see another guy who's kind of like a monkey guy saying that there's no way Shiva would lose because in his fists is the spirit of all 1,116 of them. We get another god cheering him on. He's telling him to beat Raiden into the fucking ground. And we see a bunch of the Hindu gods all cheering him on and saying that out of all of us, you're at the top. And we get Shiva's inner monologue saying, even with my back on them, I can tell, just like it's always been, every last one of them's got their eyes dead set on me. And we see that Shiva had never betrayed his companion's expectations, not even once. So we get Ganesha and Shiva's wives and some other gods. Just looking at this page, you can't tell me that Kali is not best girl. I've been saying this ever since they were revealed, is that Kali is best girl. I mean, just look at her. She's fucking adorable. And hopefully, when we get Shiva's backstory, which I assume will be next month, we'll get to see the story of Kali almost destroying the world by dancing and then stepping on Shiva. That'll be fun. But I did a little bit of research because some of these gods are really distinctive. So the guy with 3 faces, I believe, is supposed to be Brahma. Let me just check that to make sure. Yes, and he's actually supposed to be the creator god, as in the god of creation. So that's pretty interesting. I assume we'll probably get a name drop for him next chapter. And then one of the other gods who we see has 4 arms is supposed to be Vishnu, I think, who is, I believe, the god of preservation. So these people are basically supposed to be Shiva's counterparts for their respective states of the universe, I guess. So with Brahma, you have creation. With Vishnu, you'd have preservation. With Shiva, you'd have destruction. So these guys are almost definitely going to have, like, name drops next chapter. With the other ones, I'm not sure who they are. Again, I know next to nothing about Hindu mythology, so if you know who any of these guys are, feel free to tell me in the comments. But after these guys are cheering him on, Shiva says, man, I guess it can't be helped. And we see, with this beautiful page, where Shiva's giving me big main character vibes, that he's starting to open up one of his other eyes. So, I've been saying since basically the start of the fight is that Shiva is very clearly not serious, because he hasn't even opened his other eyes. And we've seen that he has, like, more aura and energy coming off of him. If you recall, after round 3, when Shiva wanted to go up and fight, that he basically went, like, Super Saiyan or something. Like, all of his hair was sticking up, and all of his eyes were open, and he had this big, like, energy coming off of him. So we'll probably get something like that with his serious mode. As we know, Shiva likes fighting, and he likes to enjoy the fight. When he was going to fight in round 2 and Zeus went and took his place, he had to calm himself down. He said, I gotta calm down, or this guy will be, like, vaporized in an instant. So it seems, if I could draw the most basic comparison to another character from a different series, it's kind of like how Kenpachi should almost always be able to just steamroll over just about anyone that he fights. Like with the people that he fights in the series, he should have never had, like, any trouble with any of them, but he always holds himself back and has a harder time because of it, just so that he can enjoy the fight. So Shiva getting his ass handed to him for the first. I would say this is probably like the first half of the fight. Is a result of him wanting to like have this drawn out and get to enjoy it. But now that one of his arms has been crushed, and he's got all of his friends and family cheering him on, and he knows that he can't disappoint them, he's like, all right, I guess it's time to get real. Which is interesting. It sort of seems like Shiva has to balance his desire to have a fun fight with meeting the expectations of the people around him, which I think we're starting to get more into the theme of this fight. It hasn't really been clear since the start, but I think with this chapter, and certainly with next chapter, where it's like a 99% chance that we're getting a Shiva backstory. I mean, with the way he's opening his eye now, and you have the introduction of his relationship with the other Hindu gods, it seems very obvious that we're opening the door to go into Shiva's backstory. That we're getting into the theme of like either proving yourself or meeting the expectations of those around you, something like that, because we've been talking since last month about Raiden proving himself, and this chapter about how he's going to learn his own strength and prove what he can do. And with Shiva, we have the expectations of the Hindu gods and him not wanting to disappoint them, as he's never disappointed them before. So I think that's very interesting. Again, I think Shiva's going to win. I hope he does, because I personally, I like Shiva more than Raiden, which is not to say that I don't like Raiden. I think he's pretty cool. But I just kind of like Shiva's aesthetic and personality more. And I don't want to see someone get murdered in front of their family again. I would prefer not to relive that trauma. So, I'm rooting for Shiva here. What was I about to say? Shit, I was thinking of something. I don't think that humanity's going to get the lead until the third to last round, because I think that works. I think it would be better to have something that huge and important happen later on in the tournament, especially if you have a 6-5 lead over the gods, and you have the opportunity to end the tournament early. I am one of the people that believes Brunhild is going to die in the tournament, because there are 13 Valkyries and 13 rounds, and that includes Brunhild and Gaul. So I think Brunhild is going to try and end the tournament early so as to prevent Gaul from having to go out and fight if she can. And that's going to result in Brunhild being killed in the second to last round, and then God, we called her that for so long. Gaul having to go up and fight in the final round. So I think that's probably how it's going to go. So originally I believed in the 3-win streak, but I think Shiva's probably going to take this one. And also, for a completely not narrative-related reason, it would probably be a bad idea to piss off all the Hindus by having Shiva get killed by some sumo wrestler. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I do Record of Ragnarok videos every month. If you enjoy discussing Record of Ragnarok with other people, once again, I recently opened my Discord server, and you can do that. And if you enjoy discussing the other series I cover on this channel, which include Jujutsu Kaisen, Chainsaw Man, Kengan Omega, and Bleach, you should check out my channel, but also check out my Discord server, because I have channels on there for discussing them as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you around.